Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited this morning. Today we have our Instridehealth and Light on Anxiety together, helping us with understanding and addressing anxiety-driven school refusal. And so I will start by handing it off to Angela.
I'm going to hand it to Laura, and Laura's going to hand it back to me.
Laura.
Okay.
It's good. It's lots of hands. It's good. Lots of support.
Laura.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Laura Beer, the Manager of Provider Relations here at Light on Anxiety. I meet with healthcare providers, schools, and therapists in the community to share information about our services. Just to briefly tell you about Light on Anxiety, we're a treatment center that uses action-oriented, evidence-based therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy for clients with anxiety and anxiety-related disorders. Our practice offers medication management and neuropsych testing in addition to therapy. We have 7 locations across the Chicagoland area. Our services are available both in person and virtually. And in January, we opened our new location in downtown Arlington Heights at 180 West Campbell Street. We are in network with major insurance plans such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Aetna. And we provide care for clients ages 3 through adulthood. Dr. Debra Kissen is here. She is the founder and CEO of Light on Anxiety, and she'll be presenting shortly. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela Malloy at Instride.
Okay, thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Angela Malloy with Instridehealth. We provide very similar services to Light on Anxiety. We are a virtual-only intensive program for anxiety and OCD, and we work with ages 7 to 24. We also provide evidence-based care rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy. Our program combines therapy, psychiatry, and exposure coaching, and we are time-bound also. So the kids are going through our program and then, kind of getting back to their everyday lives. We also take most major healthcare insurance plans, commercial insurance plans. And other than that, I think we're similar to Light on Anxiety. So I'm excited to introduce Dr. Daniel Stone. He is our Director of Clinical Innovation, and he's going to be getting us started by sharing some background about anxiety-driven school refusal. So,
Angela, just one thing for attendees. We have so little time and so much information that we want to share with you guys. So number one, hoping this is a part 1. We're kind of all going really fast. We know that you guys have only 40 minutes before you start your day in the school. So we're going to be sharing a lot of information, but ask questions as you go, and we'll kind of man the questions, and then either at the end we have time for Q&A, or definitely hold on to those questions and send you guys back a newsletter, an email that gets you those answers. So keep the questions coming, and let's keep the dialogue coming, and we're going to maximize the 45 minutes we have together. Okay, Dr. Daniel.
Sweet. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Stone. I'm excited to be here today. I'm a psychologist with training and expertise in the treatment of anxiety and obsessive compulsive related disorders. Today, we're going to talk about school avoidance. Just to get us all on the same page, you can bring them all up. I think there's some.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So to get us on the same page, school avoidance. We might talk about school avoidance or school refusal. We tend to use those words interchangeably, though there are some differences. Specifically, school avoidance is when a child or teen is avoiding going to school for an extended period of time or consistently arriving late. There are many reasons that this can happen. Today, we're going to focus on mostly anxiety and obsessive compulsive related reasons, as well as, we'll touch on learning differences and anxieties related to that. I should note, though, there are other sort of structural differences or reasons that kids might be avoiding school, such as poverty, racism, immigration status, etc. We're not going to touch on those necessarily. We're going to keep it mostly rooted in anxiety and OCD. So at home, it can look like a number of different things. Parents often talk to me about like tense morning routines, multiple wake-up calls, arguments, tears, trying to coax their kid out of school, protesting. At school, it can look like a kid who leaves class early, who maybe doesn't make it to class, who makes frequent visits to the nurse's office, or the anxiety disorder, the nurse's office, or spends a lot of time in the bathroom. I imagine many of you have had this experience. So it can be challenging for everybody. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on anxiety disorders and OCD and how that can drive school avoidance. And one thing that I like to talk about is kind of a casserole analogy. One of the experts in the field, Dr. Jonathan Dalton, talks about how school avoidance is like a casserole, right? Like if somebody eats a casserole and then has an allergic reaction, you're not going to say that they're allergic to casseroles. You're going to say that they're allergic to things within the casserole, like alliums, eggs, whatever. And so we can think about school avoidance in a very similar way. Kids aren't like necessarily avoiding school as much as they are potentially trying to avoid something that they experience when they're at school, and we'll talk about that. We can go to the next slide. So when we think
Should I
about,
just fill the whole slide in?
yeah, please do.
Yeah,
you
cool.
can do that with all of them. So,
Okay.
so when we talk about school avoidance and sort of the casserole, we think about what is maintaining school avoidance. There are generally two major drivers, right? There's something that's anxiety provoking at school, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with the school. It could have to do with the environment. It could be that the kid is afraid of separating from their parents, or that they're having some social anxiety. And then also, home is more comfortable. I don't know about y'all, but I would rather spend most of my day at home, right? I'd rather be hanging out in my comfy shoes and like drinking coffee and not doing things that are stressful. And so what we find is that, there may be something uncomfortable, distressing, anxiety related at school that we have to address, but then also we want to address the things at home that are making life more comfortable. So like parent attention, preferred activities. I spoke with many families who say, well, my kid goes out with me to do the daily routines that we have to do at home. And that's sort of like extra time with the parent. And we want to be mindful of that. And so we address both these factors in two different ways, right? The first way is for the anxiety in school, we address it through school support, and we can talk about that in a little bit. And then at home, we address it through parent support. We can talk about that as well. So if we'll go to the next slide. How many of you are have a basic working knowledge of cognitive behavioral therapy? Can I get hands? Solid hands. Okay, I'm seeing some hands. Okay, we're good. Okay, we got some hands. So as y'all know, cognitive behavioral therapy, we talk a lot about thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And in the context of anxiety or OCD, we talk about how those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors interact with one another. You can go to the next one. Cool. So if you imagine like a kid who is feeling really nervous about going to school, maybe they have a presentation during the day, a group presentation, and they're thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, this is going to go terribly. It's going to go awful, right? Then they're going to experience potentially some increased anxiety. And what we know for kids with anxiety is that the primary behavioral response to that is avoidance. So they're going to be like, can I stay home? They might go to the nurse's office. They might spend the period in the bathroom. And what we know about that is that in the short term, it's very effective at reducing stress, right? They don't have to do the presentation anymore. They're not in the classroom. But in the long term, it promotes anxiety over time. And it actually makes it worse. So what that looks like across time, you can go to the next slide. Short-term relief, worsening anxiety, great. You can just pull these all up. So what happens is that when a kid so this is a graph, anxiety intensity and time. Time's on the x-axis, anxiety is on the y. When a kid experiences something that brings up their anxiety comes up. And then when they avoid it, almost immediately their anxiety goes back down. And the same with OCD. If something triggers their OCD, then they engage in a compulsion, it goes back down. And so what we see are these intermittent cycles of anxiety and relief. But across time, what we see when they avoid is that the stress goes up, right? It gets worse and worse. And in the case of school avoidance, the stress isn't just related to anxiety at that point. Then it's like schoolwork, telling friends where you've been, all sorts of secondary stressors that come up. So how do we address that? You can go to the next slide and bring it all up. We address that through exposure therapy. And the way we do that is we create what's called a fear and avoidance hierarchy, a list of things that are stressful for the kids, right? And then we have them gradually face those fears. And by doing that, one thing happens is that the more you do something, the less stressful it becomes. If you could imagine watching a scary movie, you watch it 5, 10, 15 times, it's not so scary anymore. The blood looks fake, the monsters look like CGI. But on top of that, when kids do things that are challenging, they learn that they can handle challenging things, and they learn that anxiety isn't gonna, or that the feared outcome isn't necessarily gonna happen. And so when we have them do an exposure, the first thing they experience is a bit more distress. It's not super comfortable, but then their anxiety goes down. And they've learned, oh, I can handle this. The next time they do the exposure, same thing happens, but maybe not as stressful. And what we see over time is that they get less anxious. We can go to the next slide and just bring them all up. So the way we think about school avoidance from a cognitive behavioral perspective is we want to address it in sort of 3 ways. We want to address the school-related anxiety through treatment and with the child directly. And so when we think about that, we think about creating a school reentry plan, a gradual exposure plan, skills, and in some cases, when it's appropriate, medication management. We want to also address it from the parent perspective. And so that's making home less comfortable, reducing accommodation, removing electronics, validating emotions, encouraging brave behavior and rewarding small steps. And then we also want to think about it from a school and community perspective. So this would be, it's not written here, creating a school reentry plan, having a school reentry meeting with the family, the child and the school, and creating point people for the therapy side, for the school side, with the family, to make sure that we can really maintain good communication. And then we want to provide time-limited accommodations for the child in school and consider contextual and systemic factors for avoidance. So I believe those are my slides. Am I right? Yep, that's it. I'll turn it over to you, Deborah.
Amazing. And maybe Laura or Angela, I don't know if any questions have been coming in. Oh, well, I was going to say I haven't seen them, but as questions are popping up, we want this to be interactive, even though we have so little time. This could be a talk over probably a 2-day, maybe a week-long retreat around this topic. And I'd say, as someone who, CEO, founder of Light on Anxiety, I've written a couple books on the treatment of anxiety. And every time I hear it, Dr. Daniel, thank you so much, because it's amazing how simple in theory approach what makes you uncomfortable, don't engage in compulsions. Yet every single time I hear it, I'm like, right, that is the thing, because it really goes against what as humans we're wired to do. So you hit really like the key principles of CBT and exposure for anxiety. And no matter what, every time it's like, right, that makes sense. And yet it's the hardest thing that we humans have to do. So thank you. That was really great. So I have a couple of Insta school-based interventions that you guys hopefully can take with you, start implementing in your environment, and any of these that you guys want to go deeper on, we could open up the floor to further discuss. So I'm going to kind of switch the order a little bit based on the great topics that Daniel hit. So number one, I'd say when you're starting to see school avoidance, that parent alignment is so important, in that the way these behaviors can be defined, it could seem that someone's being difficult or obstinate. It used to be considered, what was the truancy? Does anyone use the word truancy in their school environment when someone school refusal? I guess yes. So in terms of like what is the function, what is the part of the casserole that's causing someone to not go to school? It's just so messy, and so many different feelings, often between 2 different parents, about oh, they're struggling so much. Oh, they're just being difficult and life involves functioning. So coming together in terms of understanding like what is the function of these behaviors, maybe needing a solid, it's not a neuropsych, a diagnostic assessment. It's not easy to determine that same behavior of not entering the school can be driven by the 14 items on Daniel's slide plus some. So you can't treat school refusal or school avoidance until you do that assessment. And it's not actually a diagnosis, school refusal. It's just a set of very complex behavior. So having that meeting with parents from the start as soon as possible when there are signs of a student struggling to show up for their life or school, and having that plan that gets some alignment of what levers can be pulled. Because what can start happening, I don't know how much in terms of working with parents, like I've seen exponential stress on the home zone. I had a father coming in with like a broken arm and a kid saying, Dad tried to kick me when he was trying to take away the phone to limit screen time so she goes to bed early so that he gets to school on time. And there's so many factors like out of the parents' control and pressures to let's take away the phones. There's a lot of raw emotions, and just starting with judgment free, like this is just really hard. And how do we come together and figure out what next steps to take can go a long way for the parent, for the school, and just kind of coming and the student. We recognize this is hard for you in this moment. And so really, and if you get one parent in the room, whoever you could get from that perspective is going to go a long way. Okay, so going backwards, sorry if I made anyone dizzy with that. We'll just tolerate the distress, I guess. So when working with the student and the parents, kind of naming that brain response, we could consider the psychoeducation in terms of what is happening in your brain, because it feels very bewildering for somebody who's struggling with an anxiety response, a panic response. There's a lot of shame. Like everyone else goes to school, I know it should be fine, yet I feel like I'm paralyzed. What's wrong with me that I can't function? So to understand, or like I hate my brain, I wish I could like rip it out. I hate myself, I hate my brain. And so understanding like this is a good function in your brain is trying to protect you. Your brain is trying to send you a signal that keeps you protected from lions and tigers and bears. And that's good in modern life. We have a lot of threats that are false alarms where it feels you might get kicked out of the tribe, but actually it's just somebody looking cranky, looking in your direction. So really educating on the brain, on anxiety for the family and the student can go a long way. Because it's really, I'm sure, I know we've all experienced anxiety in different ways, where that extreme reaction to something that rationally you could say, like, what's so bad? I'm just making small talk at a cocktail party. Yet, why do I feel like I desperately want to run for the door? Because our brain is saying, like, this is awful and dangerous. So, helping students understand that, they get it really quickly and they will hold on to that. Like, okay, this is a false alarm. Those kind of mantras. Better than adults, when you teach that to them, they will hold on to that and can do a lot with it. Language shifts, working with parents and school personnel from it's fine, you got this, there's not a problem. It's such a natural reaction when someone's anxious to say, you'll be fine. But number one, the anxious brain will just kind of say the opposite. Well, how do you know for sure? So it becomes a debate. Like, well, what if this happens or this happens? So we don't want to engage in a debate with uncertainty, because at the end of the day, I don't know, maybe everyone will judge you today. I can't promise anything rationally. It probably will be okay. Can't guarantee it. But if you instead validate, like, yes, this is really hard for you right now. And I believe in your ability to handle what is hard. So you're really emphasizing the resilience and the belief in their ability to handle that which is hard. And for all of us, we know it is hard to do something when the anxiety signal is telling us how awful it's going to be. So it's hard to debate that one. Like, this is hard and I believe in you. Like, can't take that away from me. I, in fact, do believe in you. So sorry, but I do. And then reducing escape hatches. So what are the different safety behaviors, compulsions? And if possible, trying to educate parents and child about safety behaviors, compulsions, that wonderful chart that Daniel showed, that you engage in them over the short term and it feels really, oh, I didn't go to that party tonight. Ooh, I feel so much better. Oh, I skipped the morning coffee. Oh, I feel so much better. You feel really good. It's such a reinforcing experience. And then over the long term, it sends a signal to your brain. Good thing you didn't do that. That was super dangerous. You would have gotten eaten alive. So the brain only learns that was dangerous. Good thing you didn't do it. And then the next time you have to confront it, you feel even more anxious. So that cycle of anxiety is increasing. We talk about when you engage in a compulsion, texting mom throughout the day, texting parents, like, I feel terrible, help, or going to the nurse's office, or leaving early. So you get short-term gain, long-term pain, long-term life suffering by letting anxiety win. In contrast, doing exposure response prevention, CBT, short-term distress, we could call it pain, but long-term gain, your life opens up when you learn, wow, I could handle life even when it's hard. And you can't convince someone of that. That's where the exposure and the behavioral work comes in. We're doing the cognitive work to kind of nudge someone in the direction, but like their brain has to learn, wow, that was really hard and I did it. I guess I can handle hard things. Like there's only one way to really teach one's brain, all of our brains, is through experience. Micro exposure planning. So that exposure hierarchy, if you tell a kid who hasn't, I had a patient with school, we'll call it school refusal, but she was really like home schooling, which, as we all know, COVID only made things so much worse in terms of learning, like, wow, I could really not leave my house for a year. This is feasible. And so that it's just all of the suffering that comes along with learning how much we can not show up for life. But I had a client who hadn't really left the house in 2 years. And so we built up over a couple of weeks to touching the doorbell. So that was like the first exposure that we built up to, was like putting our hand on the other side of the door. We eventually got to her mailbox. That was another couple of weeks. We eventually got her to, she was at the time a college student, so able to take me to college. Eventually she traveled to Germany and traveled the world, but it really started with her putting her hand, maybe it wasn't even her hand, it might have been like her finger outside of the door. And that's solid. That step is really, really important. And for a lot of kids and parents and schools, it could feel like, okay, you need to show up for school tomorrow. But what if you could actually walk and touch the step of the building and then do the rest virtually that day and like celebrate that success, versus it feeling like, oh, fine, I did that, but how am I going to ever get to that last place on the hierarchy? So those small steps are so powerful and really can be, I mean, that's the key to exposure therapy. At the same time, I'd say there's some people who just really want to go for it. You don't have to do gradual exposure. Someone's head isn't going to like explode. There's nothing magical. If you could get someone who's like, forget, I'm just going for it, you could do rapid exposures and go to the top of the hierarchy. So I think sometimes when I work with newer clinicians, they feel like, oh, but would that be too much? Only reason that would be too much is if they don't do it, and then you lose them in the process and they say, I'm not showing up anymore because you're going to make me do something that I refuse to do. But if someone's like, I'm just going to go for it, then that's great too. So you don't always have to take the baby steps. Daniel, any thoughts on that? Or anything I've said so far? Because I think I'm going so fast, we might even be able to chat.
Yeah, no, I think the way that we talk about it with families is to try and break it down to, you described this, but we give them language of empathize and encourage, right? So we empathize with their feelings. So often, at least with my kids, one of whom has some anxiety, when I'm trying to get them to do something during the day, order ice cream, get to school, get out of the house, there's a time pressure for me. And I feel like there's somebody in line behind me. We got to get the kid through this process. And so it's important for me as a parent, and we teach parents in our clinics to remember to slow down and not necessarily focus on the biggest goal of ordering ice cream, getting to school, because that's the thing that's really stressful. Empathize with their emotional experience, and then encourage them to take one small step forward. And so I just want to reiterate that because those one small steps, those build on one another. And if families are reinforcing it, and if school is reinforcing it, that helps to build momentum and ultimately gets the kid feeling more confident and back. So.
Yeah. And sometimes it really takes an external partner, because I'm thinking even as a parent myself, and you're running out the door, there's another kid with you that you're trying to get to school, like this space to play and a judgment free, that like you just don't always have that luxury as a parent or as a school counselor with so many different students, versus like we could really spend an hour like touching one thing and really celebrating that, and we just have a little bit more space to do that. So it's which partner on the care team has the room and the time to open up. One thing I want to call out for you guys, I recently made these CBT cubes, and so they have different exposure challenges, like doing a silly dance, singing a fear, getting something wrong. And so when Laura is out in the community, she'll have them like available for the schools, but different ways to play with anxiety. So how do we go from it being something terrifying to something that, how do we play our way past our fears? And when we learn something that we could have and we need to reinforce for a lifetime. Coaching tolerating discomfort. So at the end of the day, for all anxiety disorders, the core fear is what it feels like to feel anxiety. So panic disorder is anxiety about anxiety, but for really like whether it's OCD, social anxiety, when you get to, and what would be so bad about that core fears, and then I will end in stuck in dread forever. Like I will be stuck feeling this awful, awful way. And so helping clients understand, students understand that like, yes, anxiety is uncomfortable. Yes, negative emotions are uncomfortable, and we can have them. We have headaches, we stub our toe all throughout life. We do so many uncomfortable things and we get through it, but there's something about emotional discomfort that feels like, but that's the thing that I won't be able to handle. So it validating, like super uncomfortable, yes. And I can have that discomfort and I could take it with me and function, because you're doing that all the time. And you could be uncomfortable with anxiety and show up for that class. And different work around distress tolerance can go a long way. I don't know how we're doing in time. You guys only have 30.
I think we have 10 more minutes. 10 more
minutes. Maybe we open up for questions. I was just going to say, like, creating a landing zone when you do get someone into the school, having a space that maybe that's their safe zone, but that safe zone is a launching pad. It's never the end point. So you're always gently, but clearly injecting them back into functioning. So whatever that safe zone is, it's a boomerang. They're never there as a compulsion avoidance. They're there. They can take a pause, take a beat, and then whatever that end point is, they're returning back to functioning. Cool. So I don't know, Mary Kate, if you want it, or if anyone, just feel free to put a question, or better yet, ask your question would be amazing too. So anyone jump in? All right.
I'm also happy to sort of walk through what treatment can look like in the context of schools, if there are no questions.
Well, how about this first? Did anyone have a case or like a student? Can anyone give us an example that you might be in your world trying to decide how to support? Daniel, is that okay if anyone have Anyone we could help you with?
I have a student that I can jump in quick. I'm a dean at Elk Grove High School, and he struggles. I think his yeah, I don't really know where his anxiety maybe comes from, other than like a rough kind of family life. His parents are divorced. He doesn't have a good relationship with his dad, but he lives with dad, or at least he's supposed to live with dad. I think he kind of rests his head in both houses. He's come to school and he's smelled like marijuana, but he's not, we kind of put him through the ringer. He didn't have we didn't have any reason to believe that he was, but he confided that his older brother smokes in his house and he shares a room with him, and like, he can't really do anything about it. And so he avoids. He does come to school, and when he does come to school, he constantly wants to come down and like see myself or one of our school psychs. And then, I think he's a pretty smart kid. Like, he's capable of doing well, but a lot of the outside factors in his life are troubling him. And so there's a little bit more to the story. Like, his background, he transferred from a different district. He had a stint with some gang affiliation. So those sorts of things kind of are factoring into his lack of attendance, his school avoidance.
Daniel, you want to?
Yeah, sure. I think in this case, I would step back and look at it from an ecological model. So I would ask myself, like, what's going on for the kid? And then outside of the kid, what's going on for the family system? And then outside of the family system, what's going on for the community? And what are the different sort of contextual factors? I think one challenge that I've had, I worked in schools for a decade. And one challenge that I had was working with kids who kind of became the identified patient. So all of sort of the trouble within their ecological framework was identified as sort of their issue. And so with a kid who comes in with a history of affiliation and some challenges at home, I would want to know first what's going on in the environment around them. And then I would want to assess for anxiety, because I think, when we think about an anxiety disorder at Instride, for example, we think about it like a fire alarm that's going off anytime you're trying to cook food in the house, right? And if that fire alarm is going off anytime you're trying to cook food in the house, it's not very useful. And on the other hand, if you are living in an unstable environment and your fire alarm's going off, that might be a very useful signal. So I would want to learn more first about the child's environment and what the child is experiencing before sort of identifying it as an anxiety disorder. And those two things can be co-occurring, and they can feed off one another. But in the case that you described, I would not be quick necessarily to jump straight to an anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
Avoidance.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I don't even know that it is. But he's just kind of, I think, has some of the traits and characteristics that he demonstrates in school are similar. But you're right. I think
sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay.
Then I would wonder about like how. So we know that interpersonal connectedness is a very important component of like child adolescent health. Right? And that if a child feels disconnected from people around them, they're at higher risk of unsafe behaviors, of affiliations that bring a sense of connection that might not be super helpful. And so the question I would have in my mind is like, how can we, in the context of school, help this child feel connected to the community or to even an individual, right? Because even one connected relationship is protective against substance use. It's protective against suicide. It's protective against, criminal involvement, for lack of better language. And so one question I might have is like, how can we make school a place for this kid to be safe and to grow? And I have thoughts about that, but I'm happy to touch base offline as well.
Yeah. And Stephen, the fact that it sounds like he's going to use, this is when you're starting with an engaged party that the world is kind of working against, yet the resilience that he is showing in pushing forward, and then just like Daniel's saying, really trying to build that up, and at the end of the day, showing up for school is about showing up for life. And so even if it's harder to get there or you have to get there late, it's not all or nothing, but it's about how that's why school refusal is a psychological emergency, because it's comparable to, as an adult, not showing up for your life, not showing up to take care of your kids, not showing up for work. So, from our perspective, it's about how, and he's got so much going on working against it. How do we show up to the capacity that we can show up and build up that resilience? And it's wonderful that you're a safe place to go to. And he sounds like a really special person. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Do we have time for Daniel's case? And anyone who has to hop off. But Daniel, did we lose you?
No, I'm right here.
Square. Oh, yay! Your square moved. Oh no,
Yeah,
there was a Daniel who raised his hand for a case, but maybe he's gone now. Oh, okay. Forget. There was someone who seemed like they had a potential student that they were hoping to share, but I think they might be gone.
I think he's not longer.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. No.
Let me just share this. So am I sharing school avoidance?
Do you want me to share the slide, or do you have it up?
Yeah, let me just pull this up real quick.
Cool.
And so I'm not going to go, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into the a particular case, but I just wanted to walk through sort of how we would approach school avoidance in the context of meeting with the school and the family. So the first thing we would do is have a school reentry meeting. We'd create a gradual reentry plan, and we'd set up temporary accommodations. And in the context of the school reentry meetings, this is about Alex. If we had more time, I would tell you Alex's story. We would create a 10-day school reentry plan. That's flexible, but the goal with school avoidance, we want to get kids, if it's anxiety-driven, back in school as quick as humanly possible. We want to clarify the school schedule and expectation for participation at each step of this plan. So everybody should know what's expected at each step, so we can determine, do we move to the next step? Do we stay here? Do we step back a little bit? We want to establish a point person at the school, because one of the biggest challenges we have is that communication breakdown and diffusion of responsibility can keep the kids stuck. Want to create a plan for missed work. But we determine a plan for communication between home, school, and outside providers. So we have a point person and we have a plan in place so everybody knows what to expect when. We'll determine a reward plan for the child, which can be very different depending on what the child is experiencing. And we'll brainstorm strategies to use during the day. This is sort of an example, right, of what it could look like. This is a fear and avoidance hierarchy. We start at the bottom, we go to the top. You might wake up, have a structured school day at home, drive to the school, go around the school, be in a private room, attend 1 to 2 classes, attend 2 to 3 classes, attend the majority of the day. And so the kid is working through these as they're going through the 10-day plan. And we try to make it very specific, right? So we will document with the family and the kid the day, the arrival time expected, the expected leave time, what is expected from them when they're there, and any notes, right? And that way, again, we're trying to gather this data and use this information to really support the child in getting back to school. Some strategies, I'm just going to bring all of these up. In terms of the schedule, we might drop a class, we might modify arrival or leave time, might begin school with a preferred class, start the day with a preferred activity. We might build in resource periods. In terms of assignments, we might give a bit of forgiveness, because the back pile up can be so huge that ultimately can become a vector of avoidance, if you will, a variable they avoid. In class, we might have them develop a schedule with due dates for missing assignments. We might, if they're socially anxious, we might say to the teacher, for this week, you're not going to call on this kid. And then next week, maybe calling them once, and the week after, calling them two. So I won't go through the outcomes, but what I'm trying to share is that the process for addressing school avoidance, as we do it at Instride, and I believe at Light on Anxiety, is very structured and very tailored to the child's specific needs. And the reason that we do that is through the structure, I think we can maintain movement forward, and through the tailoring to the child's needs, we can make sure that we're addressing their specific concerns at the time. So that's my spiel.
Thank you guys for joining us on a Monday morning, so early and so engaged. And as discussed, I would happily attend a 2-day retreat on this topic because it's so complicated. So we would be honored to join you guys for some kind of part 2 in some form, not to speak for you guys in strides, but you seem like we're in sync. So I think this is a great forum too. And so I guess take the material, think about if there's additional questions, and you could get that to Mary Kate. She'll get it to our team, and we're happy to share more based on this conversation.
Yeah, and I can send over the slide deck because I know, Daniel, you just shared those extra slides which were not in the original one, so I can piece that together and send it over to you, Mary Kate, to share with the team.
That'd be great. Thank you. Well, we really appreciate you all being here this morning as well and sharing with us some of these strategies. I know that they're things that we all could use daily. We all have students that are experiencing these things. And so we just really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And so I will, once I get those slides, I'll send those out to everybody as well as the recording. And then if there are other materials from your organizations that you'd like me to send out as well, I can send those with that email to everybody as well. So thank you all, and I hope you all have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.